Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How are you doing today?
Good. We had a big night in the Staples household the other night. Wednesday night, we were in the semifinal game of our summer beer league. And my wife, who started playing hockey for the first time ever in her mid-40s, is now playing it for a few years. She's like immigrant to Canada, so didn't grow up with the game. But she made the assist on the winning goal that got us to the finals. So she's been working really hard to get better at hockey, and it's paying off. She made a great pass.
Really?
Yeah, she really came through for the team, and
Right.
it was a great play. And to come, you can play hockey a lot and never be involved in a winning goal in a playoff game, through minor hockey or beer league. And so that was pretty great. I'm really proud of her. That was a big moment. So how are you doing?
Is she a goal scorer or mainly a playmaker then?
She's more of a, she says her goal, she's got 0.5. She wants to break the 0.5 points per game threshold.
Okay.
So she's scored a few goals, and she's got mainly assists, I think. I'm kind of a defenseman on the team. Right. We both have like Oilers spirit animals, like players that we model our game on. Mine is kind of Cody Ceci, and hers is Kailer Yamamoto.
Okay, so you're not Chris Russell then?
No, I'm a little bit. I don't block shots. I will not block a shot unless it's by mistake. I can assure you of that. Like, if it's a shot, I'm trying to get out of the way. But yeah, I'm kind of like, I try to be the steady defenseman who does not make any mental errors and hangs in there and moves the puck. All right. How are you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing all right. It's been a couple of weeks since we did one of these. Of course, it's downtime mostly for the team, but for hockey generally. So we've got had some family visiting. Been getting out walking every day. Weather's been nice. And of course, we're pounding away at the Cult of Hockey, post a day every day.
Indeed.
Only the three of us. So it's a 12-month-a-year hockey town. I learned that long since.
Yes, we the faithful were a little less faithful in doing podcasts than we normally are, but it is midsummer, so I hope people will be a bit forgiving. We're back though. We're back. As Ray Lucas said in Crime Story, we're back. We're on top, and you got nothing on us. All right. Bruce, we'll start off going back to about 10 or 11 days ago when Kailer Yamamoto signed a new contract, 2 years at $3.1 million a year. And he signed it. He both Puljujarvi and he averted arbitration. And it's kind of, I don't know if Holland's summer is over, but it may not be. There may be some more moves, and we'll get into that. But the obvious things are all done. I'm going to suggest the obvious stuff. And I'm glad that he signed for 2 years. I took it. I don't know if everyone took it this way, but I took his 2-year deal at essentially the same money as Puljujarvi got. Puljujarvi 1 year at $3 million, as a sign that of more commitment to Yamamoto. Both like the two sides coming together closer than Puljujarvi and the Oilers are. Puljujarvi seems to be on a. It seems to be that they actually may go into the season with him, and he's going to be on the team. Suddenly, that's the talk of Oiler insiders. Is that, like, the trade stuff is way back in the back burner, but the Yamamoto signing, I'm taking that as just there's a bit more commitment to this player, or there's a bit more between the two sides. There's more commitment would probably be a better way to put it. Nonetheless, it's interesting on Oilers now, Bruce. For the first time in months, Bob Stauffer has been talking about Puljujarvi in a top 6 role on a line with Leon Draisaitl.
What do you know?
And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And now that I got a cat here in this room, I'm going to open the door as soon as I get and Yamamoto on the third line, which analytically, this isn't just analytically. Every single stat, advanced stats, normal stats, would seem to indicate that Jesse Puljujarvi, except in the playoffs at least, was just that much more effective at even strength than Kailer Yamamoto. And there's going to be some disagreement on how big that gap was between the two players. I think in the playoffs, Yamamoto was better than Puljujarvi, but in the regular season, just every statistical indicator that there is, and I don't think that's an overstatement, every single one is going to indicate that maybe not goals per 60 at even strength. Maybe there's one that Yamamoto might be ahead of him, but every single one, I think, indicates Puljujarvi was a superior player. And for me, I don't know why he's not on a line with Connor McDavid and Evander Kane to start the year, but these things will shift around. But I'm just glad he's back. I'm glad Yamamoto's back. See what happens next. What do you make of it all? I've got to get rid of this cat. I'll let you
go. We don't know who's on who is going to start the year with McDavid and Kane. In fact, we don't even know that McDavid and Kane are going to start the year with each other, right? This is August. And so, there's the cat. So this is August, and even a total insider like Bob Stauffer has, this is August, right? We don't know who's going to start the season with McDavid in October. I agree with you, and analytically, I've been making this case hard for a long time that Puljujarvi really posted some exceptional on-ice results last year, made the McDavid line even better when he was on it, made the Draisaitl line even better when he was on that, made the Nuge line even better when he was on that, and it was a constant trend with multiple, high-level line mates that did well, were good players regardless, but did even better with him. And the flip side was that often the comparison right winger was Yamamoto, and his stats were a little bit lower in terms of driving play, also point scoring. And, in the playoffs, I think Yamamoto was a -5 at the end of the playoffs, and I don't have the even strength stuff right in front of me. I do know Puljujarvi was dead even in the playoffs, and people were disappointed in his play, and that was playing on the third line, and, they were just sawing off their part of the game. Whereas Yamamoto was actually getting outscored in his part of the game, and so it wasn't all sweetness and light from him, but his production was maybe a little steadier. But they had, Yamamoto's agent and his camp, let's call it, played this pretty well. They got 1 year extension at $1.175 million at the end of the ELC, and now he signed 2 years for 3.1. Well, that's almost $7.4 million over 3 years. It's, from the end of his ELC to just before he becomes UFA. Whereas Puljujarvi, he got 2 years at just 1.175 and 1 year at 3. So he only got about $5.4 million over the exact equivalent 3 years of his career. Yamamoto made $2 million more bucks because he signed the 2 year deal at the higher term. Puljujarvi signed his at the lower term. You look at just the cap hits, that kind of disappears until you look a little harder at it. And so when you consider, their output and just the way they played, Yamamoto's always been running 1 year behind Puljujarvi, and when their current contracts expire, that same will hold because Yamamoto runs an extra year. On the other point of view, though, Puljujarvi only had 2 years before UFA, and Yamamoto had 4. So it always made sense to me that Kailer would sign a 2 year extension, and that was no surprise. And yes, first thought was sign him for 4 or 5 years if you can while his boxcars are low. But I think that possibility went away when his playoffs were not that satisfactory, and also there just wasn't enough cap space to do it. So signing him for 1 year is an excellent plan B. Hopefully they keep him for the 1 year, and then they can make a good informed decision next spring after the 22-23 season is over as to what and where he goes next.
Here's one for you, Bruce.
Yep.
In terms of these two players, I just want to say I'm actually thrilled at this point that the Oilers were able to bring in Evander Kane. Keep Evander Kane. Get Jack Campbell signed. Get a top goalie signed. Keep Evander Kane. Keep Brett Kulak, and also keep Puljujarvi and Yamamoto. Like this, if they're able to pull this off, that's a really, really good summer for Ken Holland. Now, you're not bringing in new talent except in net, but you've done something that I didn't expect was going to happen. That's a great achievement, and I want to put a bow on this in terms of Puljujarvi and Yamamoto. They're both really good hockey players, I think, and I think they're both what you would call glue players on the top lines. They're not, they're not the Mark Messier, Glenn Anderson, or the Yari Curry, Wayne Gretzky's on these lines, but they're the Crucial Niskis, the Willie Lindstroms, the Mark Napiers. Those guys, and some of those guys were a lot better than others in that role. There's a big difference between Esa Tikkanen and I don't know, Matty Hagman, although I like Matty Hagman too, but let's think, there's a big difference between some of the third wheels and some of the other third wheels on these lines. But so I think they actually have two really strong glue players who do a lot of little things that help the stronger offensive players thrive. And what proves that is if you look in the McDavid era at the top line combinations, in the McDavid era, Yamamoto in the top 6 line combinations, Yamamoto and Puljujarvi are on 3 each of the top 6 line combinations. So the very top line combination has been McDavid, Kane, and Puljujarvi last year. And I don't usually like on ice stats, which are to rate individual players, but when you're looking at lines, this is 3 players. They're helped by D-men, but I think it gets to be a fairly useful stat actually, and a fair stat when rating lines. The only problem is the sample sizes can be kind of small because the lines don't stay together very much these days. But I think it's a useful and fair way to talk about line combinations. So Kane, Puljujarvi, McDavid, 10 goals for, 1 against, a goals for percentage of 91%. So by far the best combination. So this is why, let's go back to that. Is that such a crazy idea? Number 2, Bruce, McDavid, Draisaitl, Yamamoto. McDavid, Draisaitl, Yamamoto. First time Draisaitl appears on this list. 72% goals for. Number 3, the Dynamite line, who have played together 664 minutes over 3 seasons now. Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, and Yamamoto. 66% goals for percentage. Next up, McDavid, Kane, and Yamamoto. McDavid, Kane, and Yamamoto. Okay. 65% goals for percentage. 65%, which is it's out of this world good. Not quite up there with 91%, but really, really good. Yep. And then you have McDavid, Hyman, and Puljujarvi, 61%. And you have McDavid, Draisaitl, and Puljujarvi, 60%. Right. So we're seeing a lot of Puljujarvi, a lot of Yamamoto in these really, any line that's getting 60+% goals for percentage is worth keeping, is worth throwing on the ice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the fact that Puljujarvi's name comes up again and again and again, and Yamamoto's, they're both top 6 wingers, is the truth, I think. And I hope they're
I see it. They're 5th and 6th on the among the forwards. The argument could be made that you put the 2 centers and the 2 left wingers and then the 2 right wingers if you're ranking the top 6 the way they were put together for most of last year, at least during the Woodcroft part. And but your comparison, cross-era comparison to guys like Willie Lindstrom and Mark Napier, I think that's pretty spot on. You want a good third good player on your line. You can't afford to pay all of them 10 or even 5 million, but you want them all contributing to the overall performance of the line. And I think they've kind of got that. I mean, for now at least, barring whatever happens to sort of resolve this salary cap situation, I think we'll get into that at one point. But the way they've got the guys signed now, I think one of Holland's priorities clearly was to bring back as much of last year's team as he could after, first of all, determining that he would not be bringing back Mike Smith or Duncan Keith, who each, for different reasons, have it seems they've seen their last game. So, but after that money became clear, Holland made one more move to clear cap space when he traded Zach Chaseon, and then it was let's let Kane go to market a little bit early and check out the market. And he came back and he signed even before free agency even opened. He let Kulak go to market the day of UFA, and he signed him at the end of the day. And in between times on that day, he got his goalie to replace Mike Smith and the cap space created by the departing Mikko Koskinen. And so, he got a lot done right in that one spot. I just Holland in general, I think he's been very methodical in terms of identifying his priorities and just doing things in the right order. First of all, saying we got to give Smith and Keith time to make their decision. We can't really do anything until that happens. And then came moving Chaseon, and then came the draft, and then came the big first day of free agency, and then came signing his first draft pick, and then came resolving Puljujarvi before he went to arbitration, resolving Yamamoto before he went to arbitration. And now he's into the signing of his remaining RFAs, which he got Tyler Benson done, and with Ryan McLeod being sort of the major outstanding item. But I think there's been a logical sequence to what Holland has done, and he's I think methodical is a good word for it. And I like, and I bet you the agents really like, and I'm pretty sure the players like that he involves them a little bit in the process. Like he waited for Smith and Keith. He gave Kane that chance to go to market.
Huge.
He put an offer out for Kulak and said, "You go and check it out and come back to me at the end of the day." And that there's a level of respect that Holland treats his players with. And I commented on this before when he brought in a bunch of players and he gave them all a real solid chance to make the NHL.
Yes. Yeah.
That I suspect that he's fairly highly regarded in the, especially in the agent community, as given the players a pretty fair crack at it. So in that respect, hats off to Ken Holland. I think he's doing a lot of things right.
I agree. One of the interesting things, Kane, that whole thing with the San Jose hearing, that was supposed to happen.
What is going on?
Yeah, what is going? Anyway, we don't know what's going on, but I think there's like zero chance there's any kind of blowback on the Oilers here. Kane signed here; he's going to be here, and I just think they're trying to figure out, can they settle this with San Jose just paying him some money, or they're going to have the arbitrator make San Jose pay him some money. I think San Jose is going to be on the hook. I don't think they have a strong case for axing his contract, from what I've seen. So, and I don't know everything about that, but I just think it's just a negotiation. So that maybe both sides are pushing it down the road and seeing if they can resolve it before they go to the arbitrator. But
I wish they would. I have a nightmare scenario in which San Jose loses the arbitration, gets saddled with Kane's contract, and winds up trading it to Edmonton for assets, where the Oilers wind up with a higher cap hit. Now, I would have to think the Oilers would insist on San Jose retaining something, and I would think that would only be fair. San Jose screwed around and found out, as the saying sort of goes, that they would be forced to eat at least some of his salary. But I wish they just resolved the damn thing. I mean, it's been months.
San Jose cannot win. I don't actually think that can happen. I think there's 0% chance of that happening, because Kane at this point, he's going into arbitration. He's not asking for that contract to be reinstated. That's not what he wants. San Jose's already axed that contract. Okay, they have to argue we were right to axe that contract. That's their whole argument. They already did it. They've got to defend it. Kane isn't going to go there saying, "Well, I want that contract back in place." He's got a contract. He might have made that argument before when he had no new contract, when there was no economic prospect for him making money. Now he goes to arbitration and he says, "I have a contract. I've done everything I can to make money, even though they axed my contract. I just want them to make good on what they owe me." That's what arbitration is about. It's not about anything else. And that was raised, but I think it was always raised by people who didn't understand the process, where it was at that moment. The second it becomes obvious Kane's going to get a new and lucrative contract, he ain't asking for that old contract reinstated. That's the position when you're cast loose by the San Jose Sharks and you might not get a good contract.
Right.
Kane's not asking for that. That doesn't happen in arbitration. Anyway, I also, just in terms of the line combinations, Bruce, if you have Puljujarvi and Yamamoto in the top six, that means Nugent Hopkins your third line center, which I'm good with that. It's one of the core 12 positions, as we've talked about. Absolutely. Third line center, you got to have a good player. I like Ryan McLeod. Ryan McLeod's even strength scoring numbers are not strong. He's flashy right now, but he's not that effective as point scorer, or I think he's a good player. I wouldn't mind seeing Ryan McLeod on the wing on the third line. And if Derek Ryan's fourth line center, or if they go with 11 and 7. So I don't mind McLeod on the wing. I kind of like Nugent third line center at this point, given his lack of scoring at even strength in top line situations is a bit of a concern. And I think he's improved a lot defensively. I think he's quite a strong defensive player from what I saw from him at center. So that works for me.
You know who else likes Nuge as a third line center? Kelly Rudy.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. He was, Kelly Rudy was caught in the crossfire in this town about 5 or more years ago in a Hockey Night in Canada game when he was saying that he thought Nuge would be a good 3C, and it outraged us. I think they were playing and probably losing to Calgary at the time on a Saturday night game, and tempers were already a little short. And then Rudy came out with this blasphemy about RNH.
Well, maybe
but you know what? When your first two centers are Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, having a terrific third line center is not a bad spot to have either. And I think as 3Cs go, I think, Nuge is an expensive one, but I think well qualified. And of course, he is an ace on both special teams, which really, really helps. That helps Ryan McLeod's game as well. So the Oilers are very rich at the center position right now. And I have yet to catch up on the actual reading of these articles, but Travis Yost of TSN, I'm almost positive ranked Oilers #1 at the center position in the NHL. So
yeah, there's a different context of course to Harudi's comments. Then back then, I think a lot of us were afraid Nugent Hopkins was going to get traded away from the Oilers without ever having had a chance, Bruce, to play wing. And we all wanted to see him on the wing because he hadn't had tremendous success as a first or second line center. I think it's he was good, but then you get McDavid and Draisaitl, and he seemed to be struggling a bit now and then. And anyway, that was the context. Here's the quote from Hurdy at the time. I know I've got years and years and years of Connor McDavid and Ryan Nugent Hopkins as my top two centers. I'm feeling pretty good, analyst Elliot Friedman said on Saturday night's broadcast. Then Hurdy jumped in. Now, is there a player in the National Hockey League at that age that took bigger strides than Ryan Nugent Hopkins last year? Look, he went from being a really, really good to being a really excellent centerman. I'm a little bit confused I guess he changed his opinion a couple days later. And I was reporting on that. Mm-hmm. But
he got under fire more than he realized for saying it. But I'm just looking up Yost's article now, and there's 3 teams that he calls a tier 1 on the center depth charts: Oilers, Panthers, and Maple Leafs. And for the Oilers, he doesn't even list Nuge as a center. He's got McDavid, Draisaitl, McLeod, and Ryan. And so if you put Nuge in the 3C, I think that separates even Edmonton from these other 2 teams, Florida and Toronto, who, have kind of a lesser known, lesser proven guys. They're 4C in each case. But anyway, it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, so you
in the elite of the league at the center position. That's strength up the middle is vital.
March 2015, you reported on Hurdy saying that a scathing critique of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, calling him a second or third line center.
Mhm.
And then what I was just reading previously was
I might have been mad too, David.
a few. You were mad at that, Bruce. It looks like. And a few days later, he changed his tune and said was very much improved. So that was the context of the quote.
This was pre-McDavid, and it was during what was it? February 2015.
This is
April.
Oh, the first one was okay. The quote where he made the second or third line center was March 2015.
Right. So it was
and then when he revised,
and Leon was in junior at that point. Nuge was the number one center Edmonton had.
And then when he revised opinion, it was October 2015. So the quote that I read about Hrudey saying vast improvement from Nugent-Hopkins, looks like he went from being really good to being a really excellent centerman. That comes half year later, after McDavid's been drafted, I guess, and he's on the team. Anyway, Bruce, there's one other thing that sticks out in the Yamamoto moment, and it was this is a segue into our next little segment here. Jim Matheson on Twitter said, "Very fair contract for Yamamoto, but absolutely Oilers have to trade somebody to get under the ceiling, with McLeod likely to get $1 million to $1.5 million a new deal to come." So Jim was saying that, and I heartily agreed. I was fully expecting the Oilers had to move someone out, and it's still obviously this is a possibility. But in the days since then, Holland's been on the radio with Low Tide and with other people, and he's raised the possibility of a 21 or 20 man roster, and all of a sudden the idea of a 20 man roster is very real for all of us. So the Oilers, in order to have a lower cap, will go with a 20 man roster, and I'll tell you what, Bruce, I really prefer that to having to trade away a good hockey player. You know, we've talked about how if you trade away Warren Fogle, $2.75 million for 2 years, you're going to have to trade a draft pick with him. That's not very appetizing because he's a decent hockey player, and then to trade another draft pick. So if the Oilers can find a way of going with 20 players, and it just made me suddenly think maybe 20 player rosters are going to become the norm in the NHL. That in order to maximize the salaries for really good players, for the better players, they're going to all go to 20-man rosters. And if that means every now and then you're going to have to go with a player short for a game because you can't call someone up fast enough, you're going to do that. And I think with the Oilers, you always want to have 6D probably. But, if they're a forward short now and then, the Oilers have demonstrated they can. It's not a problem for them to play with 11 forwards rather than 12. So I think that's suddenly sounding like a really, really good idea. What do you think?
Well, it'd be nice if you could get away with it, but I mean, usually when you hear a team squeezing down their opening day roster, it's to fit an injured player's salary on their team. Then they put that guy on LTIR, and now they've got cap space to call up the replacements. If you're going with if they're declaring a 20-man roster to open the season and they can squeeze Mike Smith in there, then put him in LTIR, that really kind of sets them up for later in the season. With the current contracts they have, I don't think they can do that. And so if you're starting the season with a 20-man roster, well, what do you do when a guy gets hurt in game 1 or 2?
Well, you call someone up.
You put him on injured reserve, you have to pay him, and you have to pay the guy on, unless you put him on long-term injured reserve, which you can do if he's going to be out for 24 days or 10 games. Well, a lot of injuries are nothing close to that. But you got to have a little bit of, got to have extra bodies on available. And even to put a guy on short-term injured reserve, that's a week. And you still have to pay his salary. It's only the LTIR guys where you get the salary relief. So I just don't see it as being a feasible cap management strategy on an ongoing basis. Like I say, if it's to squeeze Mike Smith in and then you pop him on LTIR and now you got room to call up 2 guys from the minors and a little bit of breathing room. So I thought that's a great strategy. But as I say, I think with the contracts they have right now, if you're keeping Fogle and Barry and Puljujarvi and Yamamoto and all the $5 and $10 million guys, then it's very, 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 very tight.
You know who would like it? the strategy is the players, because they all get more ice time. If they're going with, let's say they have to go with 11D and or
Mm-hmm.
5D and 11 forwards, the players are
Mm-hmm.
going to like that because they all want more ice time. But I agree. Like, the point you're making is very well made. What happens when you get injuries? Guys banged up. This happens all the time. They got to their game. They got to, can they play tonight? And you don't want to force someone to play. Like if someone's sitting there and you're thinking, oh, geez, that shouldn't be part of the decision that he feels he must play, because otherwise you got to go with 5D.
Yeah.
That would be a problem. So, but maybe 21-man roster is possible over a longer term, where because then you put the guy on is it 2 weeks for the long term? If they go on long, they have to be out.
It's 10 games or 24 days, so it's pretty significant. 3.5 weeks.
Okay, all right, so that's
Minimum
pretty
10
long.
games. So
Yeah, so that's not getting, so with the nature of the NHL with players getting banged up, I could see 21 man roster, but you'd have to have pretty good health on the team to make that work. So maybe that's a bit optimistic.
Or else you hope, and I put this in quotation marks, but from a cap perspective, that if someone does get hurt, it's one of the players that actually has some cap that frees up space. Like if Warren Fogle gets hurt, that's a different equation from if an $800,000 guy gets hurt, because if LTIR is involved. So, and like I say, I use the word hope in quotation marks, but your salary cap problem can be solved depending on who it is who gets hurt. Like Max Pacioretty, he just got hurt. He just ripped up his Achilles tendon. He's out for 6 months in Carolina that just picked him up. But Carolina gets to bury him on LTIR all year and bring him back just before the playoff, and now they got $6 million in cap space. So for them, they're almost able to weaponize that. They've got their own sort of built-in Kucherov on their team. So it's a complex equation. For all those armchair GMs and coaches that are out there aplenty, some of us are armchair capologists.
I am not.
That's where the money is.
I try to stay away from every discussion now about cap, waivers, all that. Like, it's just, I always get there's always some confounding factor that I never think about. There really are. So there's there's some people that are really good at this. Like there's Ira Cooper, and there's the cap friendly guys, and so they always, like, anytime we talk about this, we always seemingly, Bruce, and I think it's a fair comment. We tend to forget some factor, like I just did with the injuries, that's pretty obvious and it's a big confounding factor, and it's going to screw up. Another confounding factor if you go with 20 man is they can waive Niemelainen and Desharnais, but if they waive Dmitry Samorukov, he's eligible to be grabbed by another team, and he's a pretty good prospect. So do you want that to happen? So maybe maybe he stays. I don't know, but I could see teams pushing hard on that, stretching that, and thinking maybe you can play hockey games in the NHL for a period of time with 11 forwards and 5D. That maybe that's not the end of the world. It's not optimal, doesn't give the coach all the choices, but if it's between that and trading away a good player or a poison pill deal, maybe we're going to go with that and try that for a month or two, see if it works. And we will, maybe it'll be Warren Fogel's turn to get injured one week. Like, I'm not sure how the NHL polices that long-term injury. Like, if someone's out for 3 weeks, are they checking, or do they look at the medical reports of a player?
If someone's out for the entire season and then shows up at 120% for game one of the playoffs, like Kucherov did? Anybody police that? Why, no. Apparently
nice
not.
Holiday.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway. So anyway, it looked like they were going to have to trade someone. Maybe they still do. Maybe that's still in the offing. And I think what we're waiting to see happen, probably Ken Holland is waiting to see happen, is they need all the other teams to sign other players, start to deal with, like, as teams, like, for instance, Montreal has Carey Price. So if Carey Price isn't going to play all of a sudden, Montreal has all this cap space, and maybe then you can trade Warren Fogle to Montreal, right? Maybe that makes sense for the Montreal Canadiens, right now. So I think there's about 8 teams. When I looked at the list, there's about 8 teams that are well under the cap and look like they could take on a significant contract or two, and they're the target teams for the Oilers. So there are a number of teams, and it's not like the players, like a Warren Fogle. He's not a terrible hockey player.
No, far from it.
He's not terribly overpaid. He's overpaid by maybe $1 million, or $500,000. It's not a gross overpayment. Right. So maybe the Oilers can find a way to solve it that way as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the good news here is that we're not talking about contracts of players that, you just wish were gone. I mean, last year at this time we had the contract of Kyle Turris that we were pretty sure he wasn't going to cover the bet in 21-22, and in fact he did not cover that bet, and it was like $1.65 million. So he cost $900,000 more than a replacement player at NHL minimum would have cost. Well, in the case of Warren Fogle, $2.75 million, not a core 12 player, his margin is $2 million. If you were to say replace Warren Fogle with Tyler Benson, or Devon Shore, or Dylan Holloway, even, all those guys are under $1 million. So you're saving $2 million, or 90% of $2 million. Whereas if you decide, no, I don't want Matthias Janmark on this team, or Derek Ryan, and you replace them with a $750,000 player, well, you're saving $500,000 against the cap, but that's all. Whereas $2 million in one chunk, that would solve a lot of problems. So that's why Fogle is getting, the attention, the scrutiny that he's getting. It's not that he's a bad player. He was, a decent bottom 6 player that the Oilers have been crying out for years. So in one way, it hurts to be talking about having to reconsider, but it's all that darn salary cap and just somehow getting your entire team underneath it.
So Puljujarvi signed a new contract, and There was some consternation still in Edmonton because he didn't give an interview in Edmonton about signing his new deal. And I think there's been mixed reports about what he wants and mixed reports about what. It's clear that the Oilers were kind of on the fence with the player, but it wasn't clear whether Ken Holland was on the fence with the player because Puljujarvi was kind of on the fence, or what was going on. I think it's fair to say, and people will say with certainty, oh, Puljujarvi wanted to trade or Puljujarvi wanted to stay. No one can be certain based on anything that's been said. I think it's an unknown exactly what the Oilers' attitude was towards the player and exactly what Puljujarvi's attitude was towards the Oilers. Other than it seems fuzzy. I just think we don't know, and we can't know. But Puljujarvi did give an interview, and what we know is what he's saying now. So whatever he thought or what the Oilers thought in the past, we know this is what he is saying now. And I'll quote from that article. And he said, Puljujarvi, quote, and this is a translation from Marie Lonborg. Is it Lonberry?
I was going to ask her. I was thinking all this time, like we follow each other on Twitter. All this time we've had the answer right in front of us. We should ask Mary, is it Lonberg or is it Lonberry?
Yeah.
So I may have to do that. And if you're listening, Mary, and I know you like our podcast as well, thank you. First, thanks for your reliable translation of Finnish into English without the Google Translate version, which puts it into Martian. That we would really dearly love some clarity on that, because we sure do get blowback for trying to pronounce Philip Brovery's name properly.
So Marie Lonberry said, and I'll go with that for now. She did the translation, and again, I agree with you. Fantastic, because Google's all over the place. Quote: this is Puljujarvi. The plan is to enter the season with a full, hard attitude, aiming for a better role, and the plan is to give everything to the team. I want to play in a big role. This is the goal, and that's why I've practiced well all summer. Of course, I want to be a good player in a good team. And as for trade rumors, he was asked, and he said, quote, something always comes up somewhere, but I don't follow them all. I don't follow them at all, quote, unquote. It sounds like he's keen heading into the year right now. and I'm taking that at face value that that's actually what he thinks. Players don't always say exactly what they think, of course, because they're, who does about, if you were interviewed about your employer, would you always be completely honest in public? I don't think so. I think that would be foolish, and I don't think NHL players are. But this struck me as a pretty fulsome comment of optimism about the coming year. So I was encouraged by that. How did you take it?
I took it as full speed ahead. He wants to be a good player in a good team. He knows he's already in a good team, as he put it, and he is a good player. And the more the merrier. Good players in good teams, they make good teams. And as you suggested, but by his play at least, he's something of a glue player. And just to touch briefly on our original topic, I for one am very happy that, at least for now, the two 24-year-old right wingers, the Oilers haven't chosen to part company with either of them. They're both still around, and I've had many issues in the past with the Oilers giving up on good young players too early and for not enough return. And so sometimes they take a while before they develop into the full player they're going to be. And I think both guys are on track to continue to improve.
It was a hallmark of the decade of darkness. Names pop in my head like Jeff Petrie, Kyle Brodziak, Andrew Cogliano. I'm sure there's others.
There are many others. Matt Green, Jared Stowe.
Oh yeah.
There was just and some of them they got return on, like those last two guys. They got Lubo Wisnowski, that everybody, including I, loved as a player, but it was just a case of they kind of bit off their nose to spite their face. Like they've had this sort of ongoing lack of 25-year-old mid-roster players. If you don't have a 40-goal season under your belt by the time you're 24, it's time to move on. It seems to be the attitude, and that seems now to be changing, and I'm all for that.
Puljujarvi was asked about the media attention on him, and he said, quote, "There has been writings about me for many years now. Sometimes it has gone better and sometimes worse. This whole time I have grown as a person and done my own thing. That is playing hockey and focusing on everyday life. I try to get the best out of me and at the same time enjoy the work. Yes, there will always be journalists and fans who write about things. I just try to take care of myself." So this is unquote. This is a very good attitude for any hockey player. Just ignore anything. We say, we write. Anyone says, anyone writes. Just focus on your team, your teammates, your coach, and yourself. So, Bruce, any final thoughts on Puljujarvi, Yamamoto before we move on to the next topic? Tyler Benson.
Still Oilers.
Tyler Benson signed a new deal. What did you make of it? And
it made 100% sense. He signed actually for less than his qualifying offer, which was a 5% raise on last year's salary, which was NHL minimum. But he actually signed again for the NHL minimum, $750,000, and he got a decent minor league component, and he will. It works to his advantage, and this is the way that one of the odd wrinkles of the salary cap era is that for the marginal, especially the marginal young players, to take less money increases their chances of playing in the NHL, because it does increase the margin of savings that they bring when they're used in a replacement role. Remember Chiarelli doing this with guys like Brandon Davison, and I was looking at, why would you sign for less than the qualifying offer? And then during the season, when there's just a little bit of cap space and they're able to call the guy up because he's able to fit in there, that makes a difference. And if you're Tyler Benson and you're saying, I haven't accomplished as much as Warren Fogle yet, but if you use me instead of him, it's a $2 million difference, $2 whole million. That part of the equation is definitely in his favor. So the minimum is not a bad place for those tweener guys to be. And if they make it, they will get paid in due course. So it was, I thought, a good contract for him. He got a decent AHL component with a guarantee of a little bit more than that. So if he spends no time in the NHL, he will receive a pretty decent salary in the AHL, and he'll be a real good AHLer of that. He's long since established that, and if he winds up being, another Seth Griffith, and he helps with the AHL team being decent and competitive, and acts as a mentor for younger players, then that's how he helps. And it costs nothing off the salary cap. And if he is in the NHL, he costs the bare minimum of the salary cap. So from the team's perspective, it's a no-lose.
I think it also, let's say the Oilers were to trade Fogle, and then let's say they're looking to replace him in the lineup. Mm-hmm. It could come down to like Tyler Benson versus Dylan Holloway. Mm-hmm. And I think it puts him in a slightly better position than even Holloway making the team. So
or Devon Shore, there's $100,000 difference there, which, on a given day, it could be the difference.
Yeah.
Because when they're in LTIR status, as they will be this year with Klefbom and Smith, every single day they have to be under the established maximum figure. There's no give and take, and you put some in and you take it out later. None of that. They have to be compliant all 186 days of the regular season.
Tyler Benson's rookie year, I'm going to suggest, was interesting in that skill-wise, he struggled. I think he was a solid enough defensive player. Offensively, he wasn't able to get his game going. Now, he was not playing with the great offensive hockey players. This is tough. Nonetheless, he was pretty underwhelming on the attack. Yeah. But he showed real smarts in his game. He was a solid defensive player, and he was physical. He would go out there and hit, and more than he's ever hit before, I think. But he's figuring out, okay, I'm going to do what it takes to make the NHL, and I'm going to play physical hockey and be an agitator, get in people's faces. Very smart by Tyler Benson. If that's what it's going to take, he's demonstrating it, and it gives him the owners. You can always use these agitating, aggressive, chippy players who will hit on your fourth line, and if he can be that player, maybe he'll make the NHL. We'll see.
Yeah, no, he was. That was one thing I didn't expect from him was the amount of edge, and I think that was sort of a deliberate sort of career strategy for him. That said, I need every edge I can take or make, and I haven't seen enough of him as a regular player to know if that's sort of been always part of his makeup. But last year it really did stand out, this getting in guy's face with a sneer or a smirk or a last little shot, and cost him maybe a penalty or two along the way. And he drew a penalty or two along the way. And but he always seemed to play with a little bit of edge. The trouble was, even when he was playing at most 2 games out of 3. He was playing 8 minutes a night, and he was playing on a line with Colton Seager, and what are you going to do? Probably not score many points. And so I think he showed some things, but unfortunately he didn't show enough to really get a shot on a skill line, and it's a catch-22, and that's likely the way that his skills would be maximized. He's making those cute, clever little passes to guys that can do stuff with them, but you need to have a NHL class 200-foot game, and he's not there yet. And whether he'll ever get there, I mean, obviously people are starting to have their doubts.
I was surprised actually that he came back. I thought he might go to Europe, or maybe would sign with another NHL team. I thought maybe it kind of come to an end, like this, this journey he's been on trying to make the Oilers, but because he's on the William Lagesson route of playing, long-time prospect. We'll see if he's a player, but it's another year, and I'm not against it. I think it was a good move.
They qualified him, and they didn't qualify Brendan Perlini, who was a guy that he was competing with for a spot for a long time. And once they made the qualifying offer, I mean, Edmonton was the team. He signs with Edmonton, or he moves on, and he signed with Edmonton. And hopefully he's spending all summer working his butt off with the skating coach is what I'm kind of hoping, but I have no idea.
I think that was the right choice in terms of Perlini. I didn't see, he just didn't fit.
That's the right choice, I thought.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been, if they had parted ways with Benson, I wouldn't have said a word against it. And he's just on the edge of things, and you could probably get another player who wouldn't be that dissimilar to Tyler Benson at this point. So
4-year-old internal role players. That's the objective, is that eventually they work their way into even the fourth or third line where they can help the team.
I do like the patience.
Yes.
It's the hallmark of Ken Holland, his patience,
Yes.
and here he showed it again. I think he showed it through the summer, and he showed it in that move. He showed it with Evander Kane. He just showed it and showed it and showed it, and showing it right now in terms of what to do next. So the
He's
Ken
showing
Holland,
patience with Ryan McLeod, which is, the one unsigned contract. Now, I think he's probably waiting till he knows how much margin he's got to deal with. Once the dust settles on all these other things, is he really going to have to battle McLeod for every dollar on a 1-year contract to fit him under the cap? Like he did Yamamoto last year. They didn't sign Yamamoto last year until September 18th, basically the eve of training camp. And cause he was in the same boat. The LC was over. He had no arb rights. He had no real negotiating power. And now McLeod's in that same boat. And you have to think that Holland would like to say, geez, I sure wish I had 1.5 or 1.75 that I can offer him and get him for 2 years. But if need be, we can say 1 million for 1 year. That's all we got. And player doesn't have a whole lot of choice, barring the highly unlikely chance that someone comes in and offer sheets him. I mean, the ball is in the manager's court. And I mean, basically, he probably dictated the terms to Benson as well, and Benson was just signed because he really did have no choice. And whereas McLeod is, they may be able to negotiate a, 50 or 100,000 here or there, but I think the bigger question is it 1 year cheap, or is it 2 years fairly cheap? And what can we do? And if they wind up trading Tyson Barrie as opposed to Warren Foegele, that maybe changes the balance of how much room they got to maneuver with.
So the idea of trading Tyson Barrie, I think that it's less likely now with Duncan Keith gone. I think they want to keep this veteran defenseman around. So
Yes.
and so his value to the Oilers has gone up, whereas his value around the NHL has gone down as the summer's gone along because teams were able to fill their needs at right shot power play defenseman. There was lots of options this year, and teams have picked up those players who needed that kind of player. So he's got less value to other NHL teams. I just don't see Tyson Barrie being moved at this point. I know some people would like the Oilers to solve their cap problem that way. I don't think it's the best way to do it, and I actually don't think it's that realistic anymore. That said, if they were able to move Barrie, there is an option. There's this talk of veteran players, as Bob Stauffer has put it, veteran players who've made more than $50 million in the NHL career who are seriously considering the Oilers. And I'm assuming they're talking about like 1-year contracts at about $1 million each for these veteran kind of players. And two names have come up repeatedly: PK Subban and Phil Kessel, not Phil Housley, as I said on Oilers Now a couple times. Phil Kessel is the other guy. Looking at the two players, Bruce, Kessel makes some sense to me. And obviously would have to find cap room, but Kessel makes more sense because Subban with Tyson Barrie in Edmonton, I just don't see Subban signing as a 7th D man. I don't see him wanting that role, but I think that's what his role would be unless they went with 4 right shot defensemen. And I don't think they're going to do that. No, I think they want to play Philip Broberg. They want to see what they have there, and I think they need to do that. Or Dmitry Samorukov or some young player.
He's the 7th.
Yeah, they need to give these young guys a chance, break some young guys in. So Subban doesn't make sense to me. But he had nearly a point per 60 minutes of even strength time. His even strength scoring last year in New Jersey was very similar to the level that we saw from Kulak, Barrie, Duncan Keith, and Darnell Nurse. They weren't that far off PK Subban's per 60 even strength total. So looks like he can still move the puck. If they were to trade Barrie, which I think again is unlikely, Subban that's an interesting thought as a replacement player, but otherwise I don't see him fitting. As for Kessel, he scored at a very high rate at even strength, or at a solid rate, I should say, at a top 6 rate. He was 2 points per 60 at even strength, and he did that despite the fact that he only shot about 5% on his own shots on net. He's an 11% career shooter. So Kessel didn't score much last year, but poor puck luck probably came into play there. And he looks like he's still got something to give on the attack. He's a top 6 attacker. And so if you can bring him in on $1 million contract, I think that's a good play for the Oilers to do. And I'd like to see that happen, but there's lots of teams now. Suddenly money's coming open for Vegas with Robin Lehner's injury. It's probably coming open for Vegas. As you mentioned, just in Carolina, right? Money's open now for Carolina. I could see Kessel getting more money in another city suddenly. And he'd have to really want to come and play with McDavid and Draisaitl to take a $1 million contract at Edmonton. It's possible he'll do that. I don't know if we'll see it or not, though. What's your take on them?
Yeah, part of me. I mean, Phil Kessel, obviously, he comes with a significant depth of bona fides and credentials. I mean, he's got 399 career goals, despite the poor season he just had in Arizona, where his shooting percentage fell off the charts. But part of me worries, well, is that just a sort of canary in the coal mine that he's losing the skills that he had? Do we want to get him at the Kyle Turris phase of his career and be paying any kind of a premium for that? He was clearly in Arizona by usage. He was basically the second behind Clayton Keller on the wing there, on right wing as listed here anyway. And but Arizona is a pretty poor team. On Edmonton, I'm not sure that he fits necessarily in the top 6 the way it is, unless you're saying we're going to bring him in to replace one of the 2 younger guys. And that's the same question you're asking about PK Subban. If you're bringing him in to replace Tyson Barrie, if you're going to trade Tyson Barrie, then you need to replace him. And then PK Subban becomes a reasonable option. To sign him as a 7th D when they've already got 3 right shot D that are pretty established in CC, Bouchard, and Barrie, that were 1, 2, 3 in games played by Oilers defensemen last year. There's not a lot of room there for another right shot D. So I would think that the possibility of bringing in Subban would be predicated on, them opening up that spot. And they might even do the 2 things together. Subban, after years of being a number 1 or top 4 defenseman playing a ton of elite minutes, last year was definitively changed to a 3rd pairing guy. He played with Ty Smith. He played 27% of his minutes against elite opponents, whereas in the past he's been close to 40% most years. And he was, behind Dougie Hamilton and Damon Severson on the Jersey depth chart at right defenseman, and he was the 3rd guy. And so at this point, you'd like to think, well, they'll get him if they do get him, they'll get him at a 3rd pairing price tag, and any other, he doesn't have a lot of negotiating power for, any kind of big bucks. And honestly, he doesn't have a huge amount of need of big bucks. I mean, he got paid $9 million a year for 7 or 8 years there on his last huge contract that he signed in Montreal. Went to Nashville, went to Jersey, all in that one contract. So he's an interesting option. There are people out there that have really liked PK for a long, long, long time. I mean, there's all that talk, remember in 2016 about the 4th overall draft pick that became Puljujarvi, plus Draisaitl, plus Ursula Kleppel.
They were going to, people wanted, Bruce, they wanted to see Leon Draisaitl traded for PK Subban.
Plus,
if that had happened, plus Darnell Nurse, and if that had happened, it would have destroyed the Oilers franchise, like in such a significant way. Anyway, it didn't happen, but yeah, there was people.
And I liked PK then, and I still have time for PK, but I just didn't see him as worth that price, and I'm ever glad that the Oilers didn't see fit to pay it. But
well, we always
some of those people that liked him then like him now. Let's put it that way. And some of those are people whose opinions I respect. So, I mean, maybe he would fit in that specific situation, but like I say, I only see it working if it's okay, we got to move Barrie to make cap space. Who can we replace him with that might do some of the same stuff Barrie did for way cheaper? And maybe that's one of the guys. I mean, there's a few sort of veteran right shot D-men kicking around, and he's one of them.
You and I, we do not get everything right, Bruce.
No,
man,
I
did
sure
we get it?
don't.
Man, did we did get it right with Leon Draisaitl right from the start. Both of us were very bullish on the player,
Mhm.
and we maintained that. There was lots of people trading. And it seemed like from people who place a lot of faith in on ice stats to do their analysis. That's where these suggestions would come from in terms of moving out Draisaitl. And I just the way we rank the players, he always showed up well. If you just zeroed in on his individual play, on his contributions to scoring chances, even as a rookie, he did well. By the way we
Him and
look
Yakupov,
at
yeah,
the
they
game.
did everything but put the puck in the net.
I don't know if Yakupov was always a top winger. I'd have to
No,
look
but
more.
when they were together in
Oh,
2014-15, they
yeah,
played the first half of the season mostly together on the third line. And their Corsi and all the underlying numbers were really good, like 54% or, in that range, like well over 50%. And they got smoked in goals. They did, they did everything but
yeah, yeah. He couldn't score. He found on
well,
so many
neither of them
shots.
could that year. Leon had 2
Yeah.
goals as a rookie. Go figure.
All right, so we're on to our prospect series, Bruce.
Hmm.
We're this is what we'll be writing about for generally speaking, for the rest of the summer. And you started off with looking at kind of the players at the lower end of the prospect roster. And so, did any of those guys stand out as possible NHLers? Like, or which ones stand out the most as possible
Right.
NHLers?
Okay, well, this year we're down to what we've identified as 31 prospects based on guys under contract who've played fewer than 25 NHL games, or guys not under contract but who are on the club's reserve list because they've drafted them in the past and they're bubbling under in the system, as the old page on the Medium Guide used to have it. And most of the guys are down to 31, I think, in large part because every year the Oilers are down 1, 2, even 3 draft picks at the draft. So they're just getting lesser influx of new talent into the system 5 years in a row. They haven't, since they've had as many as 7 draft choices. That's sort of your natural number that you should have in a draft. They're usually short from that. And that's starting to work on the foundations of what they have. So there's only 11 extras. Like, we're going to rate each individual guy in the top 20 and feature them one by one. But from 21 to 31, you're already well down the pecking order of a relatively short list. And most of those guys are very much the in the system types that were picked in the 5th, 6th, 7th round in Europe. They're in college. They don't have a contract in the foreseeable future, but the Oilers have their rights for 3 or 4 or even more years for the college guys, or indefinitely for that one Russian guy that they just drafted, Yevseyev. And so they're all what my friend Low Tide calls a distant bell. They're out there, you can hear them off in the distance, but it's a long way away before they're going to become a factor. And really, of that entire list, it was only numbers 21 and 22 where I thought there was, there's some good information on these guys. In one case, trending poorly, in the other case, trending well. Trending poorly being Olivier Rodriguez, who was by far the highest draft pedigree guy on these 11 players. Most of them were 5th round or below. He was a 2nd round pick. The Oilers traded up. They traded 2 draft picks to get the one that became Olivier Rodriguez. And anytime they do that, I kind of focus on that player and say, let's see if the scouts had it right, because I obviously really wanted him if they're going to trade 2 draft picks to get the guy. So let's see how whether they nailed that one. And Rodriguez really has just been treading water 2 years as a pro. He's entering the last year of his entry-level contract now, and he has a lot to prove to get another contract offer. And I mean, it may be that they offer him and keep him for a 4th year, but so far he's played 2 years, 1 year he split between the Austrian League and the AHL. And he played, I think, 11 games in the AHL, and he had an 894 save percentage. And then last year he split between the ECHL and the AHL, and he played 13 games in the AHL with 886 save percentage. And, that's just not good enough. In the ECHL, he was a little better, at least by save percentage, I think 907, but I mean, that's not exactly tearing the cover off the ball in AA either. And then he spent last year some time on the taxi squad in Edmonton because they had to have a third sort of what they call an e-bug, a backup goalie during up until the All-Star break. You remember they had to have they had a taxi squad and they had to have at least one goalie available. And rather than have their best goalie sitting around gathering cobwebs on the taxi squad, they kind of took their fifth goalie. They left their 3 and 4 playing in Bakersfield, which was Stuart Skinner by then, and Ilya Konovalov, since gone back to Russia. And the 5th goalie was Rodriguez. So he was the one who got the NHL job, but really zero playing time and, just hanging around with the Black Aces. And so let's just say that a lot of this isn't his fault, the way things have happened the last 2 years. But what hasn't happened is he has never really gotten a string going where he played a bunch of games and he had a few good games. I mean, last year he had 1 game in the AHL where he held an opponent below 2 goals. You're not going to be opening a lot of eyes with, sort of middle of the road performances. And honestly, that's what they've been getting from him.
Yeah. So last year, first they bring in Konovalov to challenge, and they got to give him a try because he had a few pretty good years in the KHL, and now there's another guy, Ryan Fanti, who's come in.
Yes.
And has moved ahead of him. So that's got to be discouraging for Rodriguez, like to see Fanti come in there as a free agent from U.S. college hockey, and he's clearly ahead of him. I think probably ahead of the depth chart. So. And
Calvin Pickard, who's going to be the
fair enough
sort of starting goalie at the AHL level.
Yeah.
So it could be that Rodriguez is still sort of locked into that organizational number 5 position, which sort of defaults to being the starting goalie in the ECHL. Well, that's what you expect as a first-year pro. By your third-year pro, you'd like to think you'd be a little further ahead than that. So, and then the other guy, and this is the guy that's more on the up arrow, to me at least, is Maximus Wanner. What a great name. And he plays for Moose Jaw Warriors of the WHL. He's a right shot defenseman. And he moved up our ranks to number 21. So he's just outside the top 20. And I know he moved up my personal ranks due to the season that he had in Moose Jaw, where he consistently got better as the season went along. And he was originally tagged, Oliver Prospects tagged him in October as being, a good stay-at-home defenseman, but there's no sign of any offense. But as the season came along, he showed more and more signs of offense. He had 10 points in 33 games as of end of 2021. And then he had 13 points in 22 games, and he got hurt in the 2022 portion of the season. So he basically doubled his points per game rate. And then he got 7 points in 9 playoff games. So again, he was sort of raising the boat. And this is, it's hard to rate a defenseman based on boxcar stats, any defenseman. But the fact is that he was getting more and more productive. It also is highly suggestive he was getting more playing time and taking on a bigger role with the team. He was okay in training camp last year. He looked pretty good, I thought, this year at the Billy Morris Cup, which was all of the dev camp that I got to see. And, he's right-handed shot defenseman. He's 6'3". He's still, 180 pounds or something, but he's going to fill out into something more than that. He's pretty good on the one-on-one defense, like just, stopping the guy outright, and fairly mobile, and just some nice raw skills there. And he's a project, but he's a guy that you could see with one more year of junior and then a good steady run in the AHL that could turn into a player in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, Luka Monsenberger is playing for Team Germany at the
Hmm.
World Juniors.
Yes.
Now, did he get hurt? I understand he was not in Germany's lineup. Have you heard anything about that?
Uh,
I thought he
no,
might have. Okay,
but it
sorry.
wouldn't surprise me, given what how the World Juniors has been just absolutely devastating on Oilers prospects. All of Philip Robery, Dylan Holloway, and Xavier Bourgault all got hurt, I think, in the first game of their World Juniors in Edmonton over the last 2 years. And
Oh, here,
Munzenberger, yeah,
here we go. Uh, News update from the IIHF website with Captain Luka Munzenberg returning to the lineup after missing the opening 5-1 loss
mm,
to the USA. So he's back in the lineup.
yeah.
So that's good news.
Well,
Uh,
Oilers in good health throughout the World Junior seems to be a non-starter. So anyway, I'm glad he's ready to go.
I like Maximus's name as well. It's like an all-time hockey name. And of course, a name made famous in the movie Gladiator, where like it
Uh-huh.
all resonate. That name resonates with us because of the character played by Russell Crowe.
Right.
Anyway, I'm going to be writing about Jake Chaseon, who is a big strapping, really 6'1", 180, 19 years old. He's got another year in the WHL
Mhm.
coming with Brandon. So he's had two pretty tough years, Bruce.
Yes.
Where he's played 23 games 1 year, that's mainly I think due to COVID, cutting the
Yes.
season almost to nothing. And then last year 20 games, which was really must be frustrating for him. He got injured and missed. He didn't play till March. And
He
his
got
his
hurt in
seasons,
Oilers camp.
yeah, is that right? Is
Yeah.
Was that the injury that put him out?
He got hurt here, and he was on Oilers IR for a while, and then they shipped him back, and he didn't actually play a regular season game or any game uh, until March, early March.
So
And then he was good.
he got 20 points in 23 games in his draft year when he was taken in the fourth round, 116th overall by the Oilers.
Hmm.
And then this past year, he got 18 points in 20 games. So there was no really players you're always hoping to see a big spike up in the year after draft. He didn't get that probably because he got hurt. So we'll have to see. I'm going to be writing about him and digging in a little deeper into him, into his results. So that's the next step for me. Bruce, we should just give a word for the passing of Ben Stelter.
Hmm.
Just such a sad moment for everybody in the city, and it's funny. Like everyone knows of him now,
Hmm.
and everyone was so moved by what happened with him becoming the talisman for the team, the mascot of the team,
That's a good word,
and
talisman.
and yeah, it was like that, and
Hmm.
sad to
Much
see.
better than mascot.
Yeah, much better than mascot. The he whatever you want to say, he just became
Hmm.
beloved with Oilers fans, and
Hmm.
just tough to see a little guy go through that and pass away.
Yeah, well, he won a lot of hearts in the city, and I would say around the hockey world over these past many months, really. And I thought he was a positive force that kind of drew the community together. And goodness knows there's enough things that are dividing us these days, but I didn't find too many people out there who had something bad to say about young Ben Stelter. He was a very feisty little guy with lots of personality, and the team, to their credit, they embraced him. The organization, to its credit, embraced the opportunity, did a massive fundraiser for the Kids with Cancer Foundation. They did I think it was the whole first round of the playoffs, 7-game series, 50-50 proceeds, and they were immense. Uh, so he left his mark in that way, but I think he left his mark in a more personal way. I know I went to the last game against Colorado in the regular season where Oilers finally clinched the playoff berth. They beat Colorado. And at the end of the game, they played La Bamba and they zeroed in on Ben on the big screen, and the crowd just roared. It was phenomenal. And it was something that sort of in person sends a thrill down your back that when you're watching on TV, you don't quite get how much of the noise is canned versus real. Well, this was real. and the place went nuts, and just wonderful to see. So the flip side is very sad to see, the news as it came down. Even by the end of the playoffs, I was saying to my wife, and she actually knows someone in Ben's family, so she's kept me, like, his illness was known since, well before he came into the public eye. And at that point, it seemed pretty clear that his condition was worsening, and we feared the worst, and now that has, in fact, transpired, and our hearts go out to the Stelter family.
Yeah, they sure do. He lived his life bravely.
Yes, yeah, and he was a feisty little guy. There was a great story by someone I read on the radio the other day, someone who also knew the family, talking about the dad, Mike, building a set of stairs to the basement in the Stelter residence, and sort of building the stairs first. And before he put the railing in, Ben was trying to go down the stairs, and he said something like, "What sort of doofus wouldn't build rails?" And he had that little, remember what he did to the Keith Kachuk? Not quite a doll, but it was anyway, he, not Keith, the Matt Kachuk. Yeah.
Now you're confusing
anyway,
players from different eras.
Yeah, he had some edge to him, but he was a very lovable figure, and that's not the first time this has happened to Edmonton in the last short while. It's not that long ago that we lost Joey Moss, and his influence continues to linger in this town and will for a long time, and I suspect that Ben Stelter's will do likewise.
Indeed. Bruce, we will leave it there. So we'll be back, I guess, talking about some of the other prospects as this proceeds. And thanks for talking today. Maybe a signing. We'll see.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Indeed. And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.